A while back, I did a video on accelerated Christian education, really a review of the same, what we liked about it, what we didn't like so much about it. And in today's video, I want to do a review of the preschool curriculum, because this one is where we get a lot of questions, especially from new parents or parents who are desiring to take their children through accelerated Christian education. And I thought, why not do this video? It could help even more parents who are thinking about the same. I just want to share what we really liked about it, because we are continuing to use accelerated Christian education as the curriculum for our children. Welcome to Formations of a Noble Woman. This is a channel where we share matters womanhood and the woman, and all matters around the womanhood, around homeschooling, around homemaking, trusting the Lord that this would be a blessing to you, pointing you towards Him, and you trusting Him to help you in all your roles as a mom, and especially in the light of the stay-at-home mom now that I happen to be one. We will pray, as is always our custom, and just trust the Lord to minister to you and I as I share. Indeed, Father, that's our prayer, that you will speak to us, minister to us, help us to hear you. Even through this, just help me, help my viewers to be able to make a decision, especially as they think about homeschooling their children, because we know this is really about the foundations you're preparing as you prepare us to be all that you want us to be. So be with us in Jesus' name. Amen. The first reason why we really liked the accelerated Christian education, the preschool curriculum, is first, because we felt that it gave children sufficient time to develop, especially the brain, to develop sufficiently in order to begin school. Because I remember when we started, we realized actually the preschool curriculum begins at 5 years old. I know there could be a preparation of the same in the public school, but we realized that the preschool begins when the child is turning 5. And I saw this very practically, if I would share a little about that, because in our country children start school at 3 years of age, and I know we had a lot of pressure. Of course, we had made the decision to homeschool our children and to use the ACE system, and so we had a lot of pressure, because parents were wondering, what others were wondering also, relatives are wondering, what are you still waiting for? Your child needs to be in school right now. And she was getting to 4 years and going on to 5, and people were just wondering. And I remember, out of that pressure, we began taking our firstborn through the system when she was about 4 years and 8 months, and I was expecting our secondborn. And so when we did school, of course, it went on really well, but we had to pause so that because I was going to have our secondborn, and we restarted again when she was about 5 and 2 months at the time. And I was really surprised, because I could tell the difference with her comprehension of what we were doing when she was 5, fully 5, and the time she was 4 and 8 months. I could tell a difference in that she was grasping concepts very fast when she was older. And I realized how much strain we can actually put on the children when we start school with them quite early. But of course, in the next video, hopefully, I just hope to share some of the preparations you can make meanwhile as you wait to help your child to start. But that's something I really loved about the system, because the children are free to just grow, as you help them in some of the preparations, but really waiting for them to develop, at least the brains to develop fully, to be able to capture some of the things. And what I was really surprised, because I watched my children through the system right from 5 years to 6 to 7 years. By the time she was 7 years, I could tell she was at par with the children who began at 3 years. So you can see she had the advantage of being able to play rather than starting so early, and then when you get to 7, 8, you're actually at the same level. The second one was that even for a newbie, but of course we would be taken through the training, but even for a newbie, you would be able to train your child properly because of their accompanying instructional manuals. The manuals have been done in such a way that you know what to do each particular day, and you can only modify it depending on your context, because some of the materials they will talk about would not be available in our country. But I'm thankful that the instructions were such that even a new parent, I remember struggling and wondering, will I be able to make it, especially now that I considered myself as a person who's not very good with little children. But I was very surprised that with that instructional manual, I knew what to do at what point, and to finish off well with the child. So each day, it's actually you are given the instruction of what to do each particular day, and that helps you as a newbie, a person who is new with handling children, to be able to know what to do, what to expect, how to share, and all that. So I loved that, in that as I listened to other parents to know what to do, at least I knew what to do at every stage, at every moment, as I took the children through school. And the third one was that I loved the foundation that was built. They built a very strong foundation in helping the child be able to identify letters, to identify letter sounds, and to do it phonetically, which was such a wonderful foundation when the child needed to learn how to read and write, when they got to what they call the ABCs, where you're now actually teaching them how to read. I kept wondering as we went through the system how this would happen, but I remember the next year, after going through the preschool, the whole year, it was so easy for them to connect the letters phonetically and to be able, and the sounds, and to be able to read. I remember it was not difficult for both of them to learn how to read words after that foundation, that strong foundation that had been laid in the first year. I really loved that, and I would recommend this, because I remember when we were growing up and learning how to read and write, it was not easy. I actually remember a sister of mine who would struggle, and yet I could tell now, as I took my children through this system, how easy it would have been for us, and it would have made us and many children that I know love and enjoy to read. And I know this is something that many of us are facing. We don't like to read. Actually, when we finish school, we are looking forward to that so that we can put books aside. But I loved that foundation that causes a child to enjoy reading even beyond, preschool. A really good foundation for the ACE system, because it's the child will now begin to learn to own their education and to learn to work on their own without the supervisor, being there teaching them everything they need to read for themselves, understand, and continue on. If they have trouble is when they ask for help. So you can imagine this foundation that was so necessary to be developed so that the children can learn on their own their education. So I really, really loved the foundation that was built, that made it very easy for me to teach both of my children how to read and write. I loved the fact that there were many songs, there were many stories, the materials are colorful, and activities that made learning very interesting. I really loved that about the system, because both of our children really enjoyed that. I remember just asking when I was preparing for this, I asked them, what did you enjoy most about the system? And one of them quickly said, I loved the songs. I mean, just going through the songs for each character that they were learning each week. Just last night, even before I thought about asking them this, they were singing one of the songs. If some of you have gone through the system, know this song, Pal Pity Peacock, blah, 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 the songs, and they enjoy the songs. They still remember the songs. So you can see this made learning very interesting, and capturing of the sounds very interesting at the same time. That's something we also loved about the system. The other thing is that the children start learning character traits right from the beginning, especially through the songs, especially through the stories and the activities, because you would focus on a particular character trait that the child would learn through the cartoon character that would be introduced of an animal made into cartoon style, and they would learn a lot of lessons from that. And that was something I really loved. I remember one time getting to learn about Christy, one of the characters in the story, working on the sink in her bathroom and cleaning it very well. I remember that's something my daughter took up and went and really cleaned the sink of the bathroom, and so you could see some of these character qualities that they were getting and engaging with right from the beginning through the Bible stories that they would read, that would help them to begin building a strong character base. This is something that we really loved because, of course, we desired that they would grow in character, and particularly based on what the scriptures say. The focus on one letter sound per week was actually very helpful in helping a child to be able to identify the letters, to identify the sounds, and to grasp them, being able to draw them in the air, being able to feel it, as they traced the letter sound, all that incorporated helped them to really identify the sounds and be able now, when it came to the next year, blend, the letter sounds so that they could now be able to learn to read and write. They could actually now read and write now that they had really mastered each of the sounds for the 1 year that they were doing them. I really loved that. Actually, it was not just helpful for my children, to be honest. It was also helpful for me to know how to blend words and to also understand the phonetics of a letter sound, so that it could also help me in my own reading and writing. Of course, the final one, but probably the best, I loved the fact that it's biblical in approach, and this really aligned with our own convictions concerning education being very biblical, starting from a biblical perspective. I know people could argue about this, but I personally loved that because I am convinced of the need for us to begin with the Bible for our children and help them see the world through the lenses of Scripture, help them see the world through the lenses of the gospel. I really loved that because their social studies is basically Bible stories at that early age. It will change later on, but at that early age they were basically Bible stories, and of course now incorporating other things about authority, about father, mother, all the things we learn in social studies, but the main stories were basically Bible stories. We changed our system, for example, of doing our devotion when our second born joined us, but I remember with our firstborn, actually at the encouragement of one of the parents, actually we used the social studies Bible stories as our devotion with our daughter when I was just getting into homeschooling and I was wondering how to do it, and it was really wonderful. So that's something we really loved about the system, and if that's what you would desire, I would say this is the system to go for. And the other final one that really I would share is also, I loved the fact that it just took about 3 to 4 hours, depending on the comprehension of your child, to finish a day's activity, sometimes even down to 2.5 hours, which allowed the child to be able to finish and to play, and give the supervisor, you supervising the child, time to prepare for the next day because it's quite intensive. I liked that about the system. Now let's get to the downside of the same, which of course didn't cause us to leave the system. We really loved it. That's why we took both of our children through the system. But I think when I do a review, it's really good to share also the downside of the same. For us, especially where we are in our country, I think the system needed a lot of contextualization because it's basically American, if I would say so. A lot of the history was American. Some of the examples they were using were American. Some of the things that we needed would be American, and so it needed a lot of contextualization. I remember when we were doing about goldfish and we needed to get glitters. I was living in a part of the country where it was very difficult to get glitters, and so I struggled to know what to relate, and I had to find something that would relate with the letter G, the sound G, so that our daughter could identify with the same. And I remember settling for grass and then coming down to hippo, the letter sound and needing to use hay, and I'm thinking, how will she differentiate this grass now that it is dry and it's hay now, and I had to do a lot of explaining. But thank God as I was preparing, I had to make sure I get a hold of gold dust, gold glitters before our second born got into the system, and that really helped us a lot. So what I'm saying is a lot of contextualization that needs to happen, especially if you're not in the context of the US and you're in another part of the country, perhaps even where I am in Africa, you can find it difficult. But that's something you can trust the Lord, and thank God now with things opening up, it's now easier to get some of these things and to get children to understand snow, for example, to understand summer, winter, because they can see it on YouTube, they can see it on the TV, they can Google. But for us, for example, understanding summer, the 4 seasons was really difficult, but the Lord helped us. And the second thing you need to be prepared for is it's quite intensive for the supervisor, so you need to be ready for that. I remember when we finished preschool for both of our children, you feel like, because as you're teaching them, you're focusing on the foundations. Of course, as they grow older, like where they are, they can actually work on their own, but when you're working on their foundations, you need to be there full time. And thank God it's half day, so you can take time to relax also and to prepare for the next day, but it's quite intensive. You need to be prepared for that. And then the final thing, really, it's a bit costly because it's also a foreign curriculum for us. Maybe for a person who is coming from where the curriculum is coming from may not think like that, but for us, I think with the shipping and all that needs to happen, it gets to us and it can be quite costly, and so one needs to be prepared about the same. Yeah, so those are just some of the things. There could be others, and perhaps if you are using this system and there's something I have forgotten about, something you liked about it, kindly share in the comments also so that someone else will benefit. You can also share what you didn't like about it so that someone else can make an informed decision in case they are planning to use this system. So I hope that has been very helpful, because I know there have been many questions at least to us by some of the parents, some of our friends, and I know someone else could also be asking. That's why you landed on this video. But thank you for being here. Consider subscribing if you liked this content and you like the content we share on the channel. Look out for our next video that I pray would also be a blessing. I hope to do a bit more on the same if I'm able to do a part 2 of the same. But until that next week, bye.